Good morning.
Good morning.
We are here with Lieutenant Baker, currently assigned 91's 3 unit. Yeah,
Yes.
beautiful. Going over some fire training nuggets and whatever good stuff we can get out of that beautiful brain of yours. What would you like, Andrew? All right, starting off with the basics. What do you think the ground floor is? First, starting off fundamentals for a fireman.
Well, I think one of the easiest things to start with is, really reminding those people when they get into your crew or whatever, they've already seen a lot of stuff. They've been to school, but trying to refocus on that, depending on if you have a mentorship program or anything like that. But it really starts at that personal level. So a lot of times what I try to remind people of is things that they can easily control, things that are easy training things for them would simply be, learning your apparatus. We'll learning the trucks. Where's everything located? We'll start working on those little nuances and the funner stuff, but really trying to dialing in their gear. I usually tell people I don't really care what they carry in their gear. I usually will, do a little bit of that review, what's in your pockets type of thing. You have that as a crew, you see little things and little tricks, understanding what those are. But I remind them, if you're going to carry it, have an intimate understanding of what you're carrying and why you're carrying it. Just because I don't carry it doesn't mean I don't think it's, unimportant. It's, and I, me, I mean, I love gadgets and tools and stuff like that. So I'm always interested in it, but really having them understand it, have them explain that back. Because generally what I've found is that's going to start, they're going to start tweaking that. And over the next, 6 months, a year, 10 years, you see how those things adapt and change with experience, and then generally assignments and stuff like that. And then I bumped that up to the SCBA is, really being comfortable in your SCBA and, having, good mask up times. That's something that they can do. That's free training. And while that stuff you and I can evaluate, and, we know people that are really good at it. Some people that aren't as good as others. But striving to try to set that standard for shaving time off of those things, that right out of the gate's one of your foundational skill sets is that. And I always just tell them, that's free. You can work on that yourself. And we have, I have a lot of those free trainings that we can work on. We don't always have to do that. We don't always have to be together to do those things. You can learn a lot if you're wanting to pay attention.
You're pretty big on your personal setup. I mean, from working with you for a couple of years now, I've gotten that you're big into getting tools that are appropriate for you. So where do you learn what somebody should carry? Like what's a good source, or how do you go through finding what you like?
Just on, part of it would be more of what do you like? Well, just because you like it doesn't mean it's effective. Wooden axe is cool, but it's not going to do a lot of good to you on the fire ground. Is when you're starting out, I think you want to have a lot of those things. So hopefully, what I did, I paid attention to what people were carrying, and then I adapted that through the years. So as far as what I like, I'm a minimalist. I try to keep that stuff down, and I have tons of tools. You've seen my stuff. I keep a lot of stuff in the bag that I use, but I don't consider that life mission critical stuff. I can do a lot of damage with those things, but I keep what I carry pretty reserved. I generally have 2 lights. I carry 2 different straps, personal rope. I keep my gloves. I probably have about generally 4 wedges and a set of cutters and a key tool in case I'm able to get through a lock somewhere. I don't I don't deviate a whole lot from that. Through the years, when I was taking different runs and assigned primarily on different apparatus, I did carry, some little things, but I'd say my setup's been pretty much about the same for, man, pretty close to 20 years. It's probably pretty close to that, but at no point, I mean, it does come in handy when someone else has something. I've been in those times when I don't have my bag, so it is beneficial when I look over to you or someone else. I'll be like, well, I know he's got a screwdriver or something. I don't care. I don't carry it because it's generally not mission critical for me. I know I got time to get that, but then I'm also thankful that there's a young guy that thought he needed to have 25 pounds of equipment in his gear to look cool, on the fire department, which, as you know, I'm on for. But so that's pretty much it. I'm a minimalist, but I do encourage people to carry those things. If you were on, it doesn't really matter. Busy engine, busy ladder, you carry spanners and stuff like that. I mean, there's definitely a time and a place to have those extra things for you. It's just frequency of use. The other thing when I said that was I generally have a knife on me with my turnout gear as well. But I was trying to think. I can't think that I have much more than that going through each side of my pockets. Now that I got older, I carry reading glasses as well, so that's part of my loadout.
Are there any events or tasks that have led you to utilizing something over another, or dialing your choices down? Like, oh, one time we were doing this and this seemed to work well for me.
For the most part, just keeping, I kind of doing that review through the years of, you'd take a look at it and be like, when was the last time I used that? Which a lot of times that'll facilitate you getting a run when you take it out of your gear. But those have historically been the things that I feel have come into use the most for me. And while we, certainly us, we go on a lot of those alarm types and service calls, the bag of tools is good. And I have a good amount of them, but I can't carry all that stuff in my turnout gear. So it's just easier for me to say, this is what I think I'm going to need in the fire building. This is what I think I'm going to need, primarily, which most of my time here as an officer has spent. The majority of that time has been on our engines, and now being assigned to our rescue, I haven't felt a whole big need to change that out. About the only time I change tool selection is probably something building specific or fireground specific that I see it, and that's just on my hand tool selections. That's my bigger tools that I'm carrying or my crew's carrying, but we generally have that ironed out, which I believe in. I think having those things ironed out, because we don't have time for me to sit and explain a bunch of tools, to you guys, which you guys know that, but I try to have that talk. We just had that talk yesterday with the newer people, trying to really lay that foundation out for being thinking firefighters, and so that they understand it's okay, when we don't know something. But my goal is that we start operating without that discussionary thing. And not saying we won't have it, but those are the talks that we can have beforehand. These little talks that we have with tool selections, whether it's a screwdriver, Halligan, what kind of structure, they a lot of times just morph into a good 2-hour talk tactically. So that's about where I'm at.
I love that. When you brought up thinking firemen, and that's something that we've been harping more and more on recently. So with that in mind, like what are some of the things, I guess, mental tools, if you will, that can help you prepare for the fire ground for any call, really?
Well, for any call, I mean, it's simply understanding that foundational, what are our priorities, and then, generally we'll break that down tactically, and we can do that. I mean, it's all, it, I never want to negate our other skill sets. It's fire rescue and EMS, right? We have these things on problem recognition that can become into, problem solving. But to be thinking is have an intimate knowledge, most certainly at the basic, levels, where we understand fire and fire behavior, and you understand at a basic level. Well, we can grow that really, really well beyond the point of my knowledge skill set. Same as water distribution, you just the entire science. It can grow. Do we need to be on that extreme end of the knowledge? Well, maybe not, but it most certainly is not going to. You're not going to be hampered by knowing more. We have our discussion, which is pretty cliche. You're never going to learn too much of a job that can kill us. So, really, but if we can really harp on the foundational things, and then just specifically on the fire ground, is what's our incident priorities, and then how do we accomplish that at the tactical level. We if we can just learn that starts that thinking process. Then what we do is we start evaluating that, right, on our critiquing of our drills and our training. So, after our training in experience, generally that's when we get wisdom. We generally get wisdom after our failures, and we generally just we get our wisdom when we needed training and experience to get us through that. But then we grow off of that. We're always going to have shortfalls, and once again, that goes to the basic foundation. Just for what I probably did for most of my career was, what did I do wrong? Because it wasn't always cool to talk about. We didn't always critique things, but did I do something wrong? And then, you point the finger at others, not necessarily lashing out at that, but did I get, how did I do it? And for the most part, about everything I did, I always feel I found a failure in myself somewhere. So I just tried to adapt that. Then if we did that as companies, and as the years went on, and people had different ideas about learning, I think that became more commonplace. One of the worst things is, nobody got hurt and the fire went out. Well, most of the time that happens anyway. But when we critically look at those things, we understand that we get lucky a lot of times, and that that's where I really want people to really get that understanding, because I think once you're and a lot of this stuff is real cliche with being a thinking fireman. If we're all thinking, we're all looking, we pay attention to a lot of that. While we have similarities, those operations will in fact go smoother. I guarantee. I've seen it multiple times, and you can just see when crews are clicking, they're talking, and they're understanding. And it's not always that physical component. It's simply a mental discussion. It's the game plays that we talk about at the kitchen table or the boat in the bay, and really harp on those before the emergency actually sets in.
So is there, you talked about priorities and whatnot, getting into fire scenes and working with your crews on them. Is there a good baseline that you like to have? Like, hey, this is where we're going to start with everything, and we're going to work down this progression until we reach our mission accomplishment. Like how do you prioritize? How do you classify all that stuff?
I'm sorry, to clarify, prioritize like on the fire ground.
Yeah.
So just on the fire ground, our priority is life. So when you really think about it, all of our stuff is driven for life safety, right? So it's our number one thing we say, right? We go to our next acronyms. It's always going to be rescue. Everything drives the rescue effort. So as long as we always remember that, and really just remember it and think about it at a basic level, don't overthink it. Don't think that the building's clear. Go in with a set agenda that this is what I'm going to do. right? So our goal is to rescue. So our main thing that we bring to these events to help assist in that is water. Specifically here, all of our big trucks have water and hose. I'm a big fan of not overthinking it. You know what? Get a line in there and let's start, sectoring that building out and really working for the confinement modeling of our fire attack. And then we, for me, when I talk to my crews, then we're systematically doing that. Can I set the agenda with my resources available? My line's moving in. I know most of the time I'm going for rescue. I'm going for basically a little bit of rescue. I want a little bit of water, and I'd like a little bit of ventilation. If I can start accomplishing those things, as a company officer in the first couple minutes of that, it's rare, certainly for us where we're at, it's rare that I'm going to be in a place that I have to stand out in front of the building much more than 5 minutes. It's happened once in my career that I kept a scene longer than that for the entire event. But as officers and as firefighters, you have to be willing to be in an understanding that you can be in those roles. So the more you understand about that, and then really talking about, it is basic, but if I can accomplish life safety, incident stabilization, that property conservation, and then I think you may have said it earlier, but if not, I use RECOVS a lot. It keeps it real simple. There's lots of acronyms. Acronyms are like tools. I like a lot of them, but some of them just aren't needed for that big conversation. Certainly when you and I are just talking fire stuff on the engine. Commanders, when you go to a command class, we can start getting into 13 and 16 point size ups and stuff like that, and those are all good. But what they start doing is they start making these checklists of things when all we need is action, and generally that action is a pretty good turnout, pretty quick line advancement and stretch into the building, the proper stretch, and getting in there. And remembering our initial priority is confinement. That's our number one thing of getting that line into place. Can I confine it? I generally, for me, you guys have been around me for these discussions. I generally break the buildings down into quadrants. How much fire do I have in my quadrants? How many quadrants do I got? Where's my line go? For me, most of the time, it's going through the front door. I'm probably not going to deviate that because, we see these problems where we're giving young people too many options, and these options overwhelm them. They freeze up, then they generally pick the wrong option, when the reality is I can do a lot of damage probably inside the front door. It doesn't mean I'm not going to move a line or any of that stuff, but that really starts that model of confinement. I will get extinguishment, hopefully, as my end result. But in the meantime, I really need to be working on, can I get an all clear on this? Do I have the resources and people to do it? And contrary to maybe what some other people believe, I'm a real huge fan on getting some air moving in this thing. But at no point am I saying that's not coordinated or uncontrolled. But I think it sometimes can be coordinated and controlled a little bit faster.
So you had mentioned there RECOVS and being a tool in the toolbox and whatnot. For someone like me that heard that once in fire school and then didn't actually think to apply it until starting this job, and working towards that professionalism, like what are the what's and why, of RECOVS? Like if we break it down.
So basically, it's, and a lot of times I think sometimes most of the time, when I do it, we write it out, but it just starts that framework of trying to put into words what we're kind of looking at and what we want to accomplish. And while they're singular areas, what they do is they start branching out into fingers that a lot of times can get bigger discussions. And then of course that leads into our tactical and our hands-on skill sets that we use while basic, then they start advancing, so like it's, ours rescue, so it keeps that number one for my prioritization. Um, E is exposures. And while those are the exterior exposures in its original form, because we have to start, once we start getting into this, a lot of times I just like to throw out a term, we're triaging that event, but I have exterior exposures, I have interior exposures, and that just usually lets me go back to remind people when we're, I mean, you've sat there with me with the notebook papers, where's those quadrants? Can I get into that interior exposure? Can I confine it? And that's just as a reminder that I use in that. And then on that exposure, then we have, confinement, right? We put that there, and a lot of people don't quite, get that. But remember, that's our number one priority. We think extinguishment is, that's the end result. But I think that gets convoluted in there a little bit. So I try to harp on that. When we're talking about confinement, and then we're getting to extinguishment, I generally will break that off, and this is hard, kind of shotgunning, because I usually am writing this stuff down. Is, remember, it's locate, confine, extinguish, right? And a lot of people say that, some people don't, but what you have to do is remind people those are separate events, right? My big harp is I want location and extent, right? I need to know where the fire is. If I don't, this is not going to be good. The second thing I want to know is extent. So location and extent, they just go hand in hand. I need to know where this thing is. Other than that, I'm simply going to have a problem. So in my location, locate, confine, and extinguish, those are three separate events. Where is it? Can I confine it? We've already talked about that, right? So I'm going for the confinement, locate, confine, extinguish. And if you've been on a handful of fires or anything with me, I'm not afraid to burn a house down. I've burned several down. But I think it's okay to do that. And it's okay for these fires to have that, as long as I can answer, did we search all searchable space? Were we able to hold it and keep it in a confining model? I just didn't get around to the extinguishment portion of it. All right. And that's all right, as long as we can start answering those questions. And that may sound, foolish to some people, but, we're answering those questions, and we're trying to answer them to the best of our ability with our limited knowledge. So if I can do that, it's okay. And, as long as you can, look yourself in the mirror, you're still going to beat yourself up, but, we're going to burn a few of them down. And that goes back to something like I kind of had said earlier. I found something wrong in everything I've done personally, whether it was as a fireman, whether it's been as a company officer. I put lines in wrong places. I put arrows in wrong places. I put people in wrong places. I put myself in wrong places more times than I know. But I hope that I don't make those mistakes again. And that's how that learning and understanding start going hand in hand. Because if I don't learn from them, and I keep doing the same thing, eventually it's going to catch up to me. So, and then we go into overhaul. Within our overhaul model, that's that immediate process. Do I have knockdown? Can I start looking at it? Right. And then a lot of times, they're separated there. I put ventilation and salvage. I don't put it there. It's been there for, I don't even know how long Reese OVS has been around. I suppose it's been around 50 years, 30 years, maybe since 1988. I can't even remember. But I move those off to the side because those are action areas of opportunity. Once again, I'm pretty big fan of getting this thing opened up and breathing, because we want our visibility as soon as possible. So ventilations is priority, and salvage can be it's not just an end result of the fire. I can easily start doing salvage work during an offensive fire, right? You know, we've been to lots of fires. Certainly in our apartment complex, our big homes, you get these upper top floor fires. We've got a lot of stuff down there that would really be nice to say we actually did try to save only your life, but your property also. And sometimes we forget that, but we absolutely can be in that offensive, you know, if you think of it as offensive salvage work, we're offensively attacking the fire, but we can do a lot of, I guess it would be anti-damage. We would be saving, you know, people's stuff. So,
well, you talked about, I guess it applies to all of that RECOVS, but within that, looking at any building, residential, commercial, you'd mentioned breaking it into like quadrants, or, you know, what's the process with that? How does that?
Well, so it's, so, you know, what you can do it, you know, generally I do it with a piece of notebook paper, or whatever I grab at the kitchen table, whatever square or box becomes our structure. So, you know, it's just that quick overlayment of, you know, if you're to look from an overview, right, it's going to be down the middle, down the other middle axis. And I've got 4 cubes. I don't get real crazy. I don't get real crazy with it. You want me to try to draw it for you? So, obviously, is there something that's not?
If it double taps, it might turn to an eraser.
Can you see?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't.
Yeah,
Technological.
And you know, so y'all get to just see my impromptu, which happens. And you know, and the nice thing is,
just be aware that it's going to be inverted when they see it. So if you say to the right hand side.
Oh, okay, yeah. All right, I'll try to
mark on it when you
just do A side, B side.
Yeah, that made sense to me. Thanks. You know, so you know, when you look at this, if I was looking at the overtop, you know, right here it is. You know, there's my 4 quadrants, and you know, now in the modern day, remember when I started, we didn't have the internet to pull these floor plans from, and we had to, you know, beg, borrow, and steal to get stuff. Now you can just pull up these floor plans and draw this. I know we've done that not only digitally, but then making copies of that. But there it is. I'm looking at over the top of my home, and all this is the locate. This is my general starting point for how do I see that. You turn it up on its side. Now I have cubes that are dimensionally. All right. So I use this for my fire attack modeling as well as my vent modeling, at least to what I think that I can accomplish. And then, like you said, let's see. So, does that come across like A, B, C, and D? Just, you know, but we start that at that basic level of my box. We sometimes I'll draw that interior portion. A lot of times I use this as our beginning stages of estimating or stretch. So you can do whatever you can do whatever you want with this, but where is my fire? And I don't get real crazy with myself or my crews of overthinking it, right? So, and this is the basic one, because you know I can ramble about a bunch of crap. Is right there's alpha side, there's our front door side, and you can draw whatever other stuff you want on there. But I basically say, is my fire in my front half, or is it in my back half? All right, is in 1 quarter, 2 quarters, you know, 3/4. And then, but when we look at an overlayment of our front door profile, generally speaking, what that will do is that will within 3 points, it's almost always about 3 to 4, but 3 points, and I won't even know how to operate this fancy stuff, but picture this. It doesn't matter if it's a 2-story or ranch dwelling for this. This is my fancy hose stream here. I generally can have access on a confinement modeling. If I have fire to the front on the alpha side, I immediately am attacking that fire when I go through the front door and starting the confinement modeling. If I have it at what would be Charlie side, well, then I'm moving and already segregating that section for my crews that when I work, this a lot of times also gives me access to the second floor and the interior stairwell. So do I have a fire? Is it on one? Do I have have I answered those other questions? And then in our attack model is we're going to be going in, right? That definitely several of my people would know. We automatically are cooling that second floor off, and then we're going and attacking the fire on one. And I'm getting confirmation on that. I'm going to get confirmation on the basement and stuff like that, but that is generally, and when you hear me talk, it sounds like I'm willing to go into a lot of super dangerous or superheated areas. A lot of our stuff can be done from the front door. I don't have to really put myself real far in there. I will naturally, but when I say I'm making entry, our entry might just be at the front door. How much can I control? Can other things happen? And that gives me that next visual assessment for what I want to accomplish. And like, I don't know how far you wanted to go. That's that basic overview, right? And like I said, get your rulers and stuff out, print the floor plans out. And probably what bothers me more, I went to a lot of fires when I was young or younger, and I was really fortunate that I had that experience, but I went to a lot of fires in squares, right? Ranch dwellings, cookie cutter homes, 2 stories, splits, story 2.5s, and general early, 70s apartment complexes. I'll do those fires most day, any old day with you. 2-story farmhouse, balloon frame. As I got older, I probably wouldn't want to do as many of them, but I'm still willing to do those. But now, what I really encourage most people to do, one that really bothers me is probably the 5-level split. These super basements that we certainly in our districts, and all these places have them. Put that overlayment on those structures, and we are not going to be able to answer questions nearly as fast as we once were. A 2,000 square foot home is not a big home anymore. I have a 2,300 square foot ranch. I guarantee y'all can find your way through my house, right? It's the same ranch that's been built for, I don't know, 75 years. Right. Doesn't matter if it's 1,000 square feet or 2,300 square feet. You know where you're going. These other homes, and with that open air space and that cathedral ceiling and that open floor plan, you're going to have a fire problem in a small commercial building. So I encourage you, put those lines through those blueprints, put it up on the computer and really do that, because that is going to be the fires of your future. Certainly when the next, burn cycles hit. And then the other one that goes on top of that is any of this in our, podium style belt and additional issues on our horizontal traveling. So now we're taking balloon frame that was a vertical problem for us for over a century. Now we're putting it on its side, and I'm not able to always have those sprinkled. Now we're going to have fire running on our horizontal planes. Those will be your fires. I don't have a whole lot of time left, but they most certainly are here. and they most certainly will age. So when our young people are old, you will be going to those fires and you will be talking about those fires, and you're going to wish that you had a different plan, because I most certainly have a plan for them, but until we have that experience, like I said earlier, right, when we got some training, while we're getting there, we get a little bit of experience. Well, when we needed that, then we're going to start getting wisdom. And I hope we don't learn those lessons the hard way in those types of structures. Is that good on our little overlay? You want anything else there? It's at the basic level, but you guys can all see it. And like I said, the same would be true, I guess, real quick, just simply on vent. Y'all see the pictures there. Same thing. If I'm looking at it from an aerial scope or an aerial perspective, and for some reason we're getting aggressive with vertical vent, I choose my vent locations the same way. I'm going to look it over. What's my location extent? I want to be close to the fire. I want a big hole. What quadrant am I putting it in? How big of a hole am I putting it in? That's about as fast as I can probably get through vertical ventilation without getting into some other diving deep type of thing.
Can you go a little deeper into that?
On vertical vent,
I love the 10-second, but I'm trying to soak.
Well,
up as much
I mean,
as
I'm a
can,
big
so.
believer in vertical ventilation, but so I can expand on it to the point of, I believe in it. I mean, I believe in horizontal ventilation, but as you should know by now, I believe in ventilation. I don't believe necessarily in positive pressure attack or firing any fans up until I have a lot of other things issued. So we'll keep that on the back burner for maybe a different time. But on vertical ventilation, I believe in that. And when we're not doing it, we talk about it. We say we train on it. So kind of, but if we're not going to the roof on a normal basis, and we're not getting the experience that we need in reading these things, and we're not dedicating resources, and that's usually what it is. It's a resource dependent. So a lot of times, certainly as the years went by, it was an afterthought, at least in my opinion and experience. When I first started, it was more of a forethought. So we were cutting roofs, pretty regularly for top floor fires and some of those things. But we kind of had the resources, and we kind of had the timing, and it was at a better timing event. So I 100% believe in it. I 100% wish we supported it, and I believe that there's a time and a place for it, and I think it actually exists a little bit more often than we actually think it does. So all good things to talk about. That's I guess a little of expansion on it. You can go to vertical vent classes, for weeks on end. They have books that are all driven on that by people a lot smarter than me, but I know it works. Most people know it works. There's a lot of things that we do that we don't call vertical ventilation that prove that it worked. Even the people that are brand new know exactly where hot air, gas, and fire tend to go. So I think it go up. So when we can combat that and keep it in check, I think it works out pretty good myself.
Why don't you deliver that one? I don't know what you're trying to say.
Biggs, I want you to expand on, you have the distinguishing marks, to change topics a little bit, about we have answers, but we don't always have the ability to do actions. Can you expand on that a little bit, and the difference between knowing and being able to do?
Well, yeah. Say it again. We have answers.
I think your quote was, we're efficient and expert at the knowledge, but we don't always have the function. We don't always function at the same level.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I guess I'll try to expand on it. I think we're really good about, even myself included. I think we're actually pretty good about sitting at the kitchen table and sitting in a command class or an attack class and asking questions. I can ask questions all day long, but I think what we've done, and and I'm only guessing because y'all know, I mean, I like videos and pictures and stuff like that. I think we're fooling ourselves that to understand reflex time, to understand fire dynamics at real time, real world speed, and then the mitigation event. I probably can think of a few examples, but one is probably going to be water application. I've been to multiple trainings, certainly when I was burning a lot, and I've been to, I was at several real fires that were treated like training fires. And what I mean by that, those timing events were, they weren't enough. They weren't enough. So you had people shutting lines down. You see fire. So they're looking at it, but because of the position that I was on the fire ground, those incidents, I was able to identify, like, it was just like I was watching a training fire. And that's not, it's clearly, these were live events. These are homes that were actively burning. And I really, and when that started happening, we were still burning quite a bit in the training world. I really wanted to make sure that we had to change that. So remind people, you got to let water do the work. But if you're going to go to a concrete building, and obviously this is for us, and you're going to fight propane fires from the interior with a kill switch, that's not real world. That is not how real fire behaves. It's how a real gas fire behaves in a concrete building with cold smoke. But that is not a live event. That is not bothersome to me at all. What's bothersome is that we're putting our people into live fires, that are, for what most people are always going to say, they're always going to be harping in this modern day of, we're in lightweight, it's burns hotter, burns faster. Generally, actually doesn't burn hotter, just burns faster. It goes into its gas. These are the problems that we have. You got to give time for water to work. You probably need to be slowing down a little bit more. You probably need to be crawling, when in fact, during a lot of your operations, you're walking or running. You need to watch that. So having that understanding of live fire versus, for lack of a better term, fake fire, that's just what I'd rather call it. But even though it's real, that's what's going to get us in trouble, right? When we have Class A and petroleum-based products burning on an interior, certainly if I have any other space that I can have hot gas accumulation without vertical ventilation and get an explosive environment. I don't mind the fire proper. It's that explosive environment that gets us in trouble. It's going to get us in trouble in the future because of these furnishings, because of that lack of fire behavior and building construction understanding. That's probably what's going to get all of us. It's going to catch up to us, at least, whether or not we have a super negative event. It's going to catch up to us. You guys will see those events. I hope you can pinpoint them, because that'll be the only way that you go back and reset the thing. So I don't know if that answered it, but having that understanding, and that applies to all of our stuff, right? The more we understand it, we can have knowledge, but to truly understand it and get beyond, it's that true patient assessment, it's that true building assessment, it's that true intimate understanding of why those things work in all those realms. It makes us all better, in that way. You don't have one expert that's got to be barking orders and stuff like that. It goes back to that thinking fireman. We're all starting to learn. We're all on the same page. And we hope that if we have any of those other times that we need to recognize that, you certainly both of you've worked with me. Say something to me. I get paid a couple bucks extra to take a second to mull it over, but that's how we all get better, and I think that puts that in the forefront, but we can also front load that, understanding that a little bit better. That makes sense.
Oh yeah,
all right.
Definitely. You talked about moving slow, and what you're thinking about in those couple extra seconds that you get paid for. What are some of the things that you're looking for when you slow it down, when you're talking about dialing things back and not rushing in and whatnot?
Think about it. Go back to where you were talking about as you're moving through the structure. What should the new guy be seeing? What is the environment doing? How should that expand or change?
Well, so when I say slowing it down, I'm saying it's slowing it down from that ability to run in a known building with no life threat. We move haphazardly in an environment that we know, like we would have to go out of our way to kill ourselves in any of those environments, right? Aside from something oddly catastrophic. So we're moving faster. So when I say slow down, I'm saying slow down, and we probably should be doing it in that training environment. But then it will seem too slow. But then when we go to try to transform that to the real fire ground, this is where we stumble, is simply because when I say slow down, I'm actually saying we're moving fast for the fire ground, for the real fire environment, right? I'm saying we're slowing down though in training, and slow down from what you think you know what is happening. And that's a real hard one to watch. And certainly it's a hard one as an officer. I've had pretty aggressive crews. So while you're aware that, my leash is pretty loose, and I believe in teaching them and letting them do, and I'll call the dogs back when I need to. That also comes at a price. And that price is when you let your dogs hunt, sometimes they get a little farther away than you like. So you hope that I front loaded them with that information. But simply slowing down is truly not slowing down. We're moving at a commensurate speed for the real fire environment. So we're moving with purpose and intent. And that generally, that is what is allowing us to make up for our speed. Time's our greatest enemy, right? That's, it's time of occupation to the interior for us, and it's time of insult for the people that are inside there. Time is our enemy. We're trying to make that up at every single time, every single event. But when we lose time, it's because we have stumbled. We've miscalculated the stretch. We've made a bad turn. We put ourselves above or behind, in front of fire. We get those bad reads. So those are the things that I'm looking for, right? And while it can be maybe advanced, I guess, just go back to what I said. Where's it at? Location, right? How bad is it? What's my extent? And then trying to dial that in, and I think how you said it was for me. That this is one of the sidebars of our Recio VS for me. Where's my smoke? Where's it going? Where's my fire? Where's it going? Where's the people? Where's they going? And I generally add people as it's a civilian issue, right? It's our victims and the people we're trying to help. I generally put an addendum there with a star of my people as well. And all that serves as a reminder when we're talking about these things in the station and with your crews is I generally try to talk through things of what are we doing when we're first due, right? What's our priorities, first, second, third? But then I also talk, what happens when I'm fourth, fifth or whatever. Yesterday, I went to a fire. I think I was 37th due. I parked a quarter mile down the road. It could have been half mile. So that was just more of a humorous event for driving an hour into a scene 20 minutes away and needing to pass, I don't know how many trucks in 1,000 feet of 5-inch. So that was just sharing that for your guys' benefit. So does that help you out, right? That's slowing it down. And once again, man, if we can really answer in that Recio VS and where's my smoke? Where's it going? Where's my fire? Where's it going? Where are my people? Where are it going? Including my firemen. That answers a lot of stuff for me because I'm anticipating, I'm forecasting events. Certainly with the smoke, where's my smoke? Where's it going? When I see that this is where it is, hopefully I know where's it going. I have best guess, but fire's relatively predictable. I need to get ahead of it, and how am I going to combat that when I go? And then you can just we can keep expanding all the way down the line. Obviously when I was at 95s, we generally trained we trained with 3 people and 5 people. Right? A lot of people say, "Oh, you guys got so many manpower. You live in the metro area." First off, we don't have a lot of manpower. I've turned around a lot of times and not seen any bodies when I needed them. But when you teach your people that 3 and 5 modeling, because that was our minimum, almost 99% of the year, that gets them thinking of all of those things that we're trying to accomplish when it gets into a triage event when we don't have help coming. And I think that helps build that culture within a crew. And when you get to see it and seeing it move better in problem solving, that's when it's kind of working pretty well. And when you see that, that's the understanding, is they're understanding, because then they're able to really operate. They're not just giving answers, they're able to do answers. They're able to move within the context of the lead-ins to some of these things that you hear me ranting and talking about. And it's a good thing. Communication's important, but operating at fires that don't have a lot of communication is pretty sweet. Operating at fires with minimal communication that are only $1 million statements, priceless. We have a bunch of garble and people don't know how to talk on the radio and convolute and all that crap. When you start teaching, understanding, and really getting these things dialed in, and it can be from a small fire to a big one, those things I think generally go better.
I would agree with you on that. You talked about, giving or having that pre-plan, the pre-conversation with your crew and whatnot. So what's the conversation look like with your 0 to 5 year firemen on, hey, we're rolling up to a fire today. This is what I want you to be focused on,
I feel we've talked about a lot of the things that I focus on. If someone is new to me, I guess a lot of that is that expectation. And the thing is, I can't teach that. That's one day of me giving you or one hit during morning truck check of hopefully they're asking. Hopefully they have some idea, or we had some strong foundational departmental understanding. But when they truly ask that, I just keep it real simple. And because I won't be able to teach them what we need to know, after a bunch of drills and time like that. I can't teach them in the morning. So here's what I expect. Here's your tool call out. This is what we're doing. We've talked about a lot of those things today. I gave you about a 3-minute version of that if you're on an engine with me or you're on a ladder with me. And then I also know, basically you said 0 to 5, right? So 0, I'm probably going to keep a little more tight leash and hopefully recognizing I and understanding. And it's nerve wracking. You said 0 to 5. If someone that's 5, they better have a pretty decent understanding, even though I know that easily does not exist in the fire service. What the best thing that happens certainly is when you see the other people taking that they don't have to ask me, because that's expectation. That is, when the crew automatically takes someone in, all I have to do is listen, because that goes back to they understand. Now that we do it, we've done it a couple of times. Now that we go to some fire, We do it a couple times. We do it in our daily interaction. That's when the machine starts running itself. So once again, it can go back, is it at a personal level? Great. Is it at a crew level? Awesome, right? Station level, awesome. Shift level, awesome. How awesome would it be to be at a departmental level when we're all able to have that? So that conversation is almost non-existent. You should never be hearing, well, I don't know what he wants. You better ask him. We should be driven by a common force that is going to make our operation smoother, minimal communication, and with a very, very common, I'd say, how you guys said it was, understandable theme, not just a common theme. I can ask a lot of people a lot of questions. It's going to sound pretty familiar, but I guarantee you, we get out on the fire ground, it's going to look a lot different to all of you. So, and that's the difference between playing the game or being a player and truly knowing the game. A true understanding that when you have firemen that know the game, that's probably one of the greatest things that you watch, is you see the difference when you see them in actual combat. That's the difference. They come to understanding and a decision modeling quicker. Doesn't mean someone else won't come to it. It's almost always guaranteed that the person that understands it and has some actual combat under their belt will come to those decisions quicker, and they come to them a lot more confident. They're not spinning through that 100 different things of what ifs and what coulds. You take some of those options away from people, and I think we do a little bit better. But it's that understanding. When the player knows the game, they move a certain way. You've all seen it. The longer you're in this business, you see they go from certainly for you guys and the foundation of our work, stretching lines. Right. We think that's a foundation. We say that we're really good at it. It's that difference of just how someone will throw a hip. You'll see them skip to one side or move to one side simply to gain an extra 10 feet out of that supply side stretch. It's the person that takes that extra time to make an advancement, past the target on a perpendicular target. When you see that, or the person that kicks a kink or grabs it, and then you ask them, that was really nice, I appreciate you, and they said, what do you mean? They don't even realize they're doing it. That's the person that knows the game. And then you hope that is translated throughout a career, as well as it just keeps getting better, since it's lifelong learning.
I like that a lot. Taking that crew, saying that we've prepared them and got them where we want. Everyone has the same expectations and whatnot. Can you go into like SOG versus command fires?
Yeah, I think when command driven works pretty good. If I don't know, command driven fires work really good when they're truly driven by command, and everyone understands of what is coming with that. But once again, they generally have similarities. An SOG driven system, where we really start putting people to work in our high frequency fires. I think it goes back to that. It probably happens a little faster, but we want to have that confidence and that expectation of when we show up to the fire, what do you expect to do, right? And for me, it's kind of simple. I'm not saying I'm not. I'll get thrown off a little bit, but man, you have a high probability of not being wrong if you show up with a truck and water that you stretch a line to go in for the confinement and extinguishment process. I don't think many people can argue with you. You know, we can all draw that picture up on the board where they got someone hanging out a window and be like, what are you doing? You only got 3 people, kind of crap. But the problem is we start front loading people with that mental modeling. All they're going to do is worried about it. I've worried about that effing fire for 40 years, right? And I've heard people talk more about that fire. It, don't get me wrong, it's going to happen. It can happen, but I've heard more talk about that than just shutting up and going out there and stretching lines and putting that shit to work. So when you have that, I think SOG driven absolutely can do that. I think that first 15 minutes of an SOG driven system works really solid. I think that command can work really solid, right? He shows up, he gets a good thing. Don't ask for a CAN report right out of the gate. Why don't you take a look at it? You can still see me standing at the door. Get a good look at that. Get a feel. You do your own size up. And you know what? By the time that in a perfect world, I think that SOG driven system can really go to work for us in the first few minutes that are hypercritical. That most certainly for residential dwelling fires, and then command starts driving the ship, right? And we have that in that SOG. Somebody's got to take command crap and all that, which is fine. It's real, and it should be doing it. But if we're really thinking, I think I have a firm belief that 3 fire trucks can go to work, or 3 companies can go to work, and have a competent commander show up, put eyes on target, and then start driving the ship and start relieving. And hopefully, I hope to have a lot of things answered in the first 15 minutes. Personally, what do I expect to happen, right? You've heard me say that. What do I expect to happen? And if it's not happening, I got to answer why, right? And it's almost always water on target, or I got some nasty problem I've never seen before. But I'm going to go with it 99% of the time. It's water on target. So people are in there haphazardly spraying shit or spraying it from the outside. And, we need to work better at that, letting our water work. That's generally my fire problem. I'm not saying there aren't other ones, most certainly. But, man, it sure has a common theme through the years of when you look at a fire scene and the roof's doing what it's supposed to be doing and shedding water, or people are spraying soffit lines that aren't on fire. I think all you had to do was move a line a little bit down, maybe I angle it a little bit up. I don't know. And surprisingly, fire go out more better. So I don't know. Did that help? Does that make sense to you on that for the question on, and that's, because it was quick on the right SOG driven and command driven. Was it? Is that good enough? It's pretty much that on the short end, because, like I said, I'd probably say it if I was a commander, right? I would probably drive my people to say, I really shouldn't have to say a whole lot, because I know the expectation of those first 3 companies. And the reality is, I know the next 3 companies, because you're going to be staged here. You're going to be prioritized in this. You're probably going to be grabbing utilities. I can go down an SOG driven template, probably fairly well if I had something to write down. But we don't need to do that. And then as a commander, I can take a quick look at it. All right, this is what I think. Here's my CAN report. Now, what did I expect to happen? Well, I expect a lot of things that have already been answered before I do things. Then I worry about utilities and stuff like that. When I don't, now command's starting to drive this thing. Give me a second alarm. Go from there, man. Start plugging in relief companies. Started putting extra lines in service. Make sure I got all the other things in there. Like I said, in our 13 and 50 point size up and checklist modeling.
I love it. Still working through that process, going into after actions. So are we breaking down to a task level, and are we like training on those tasks,
Well, I mean, if just at that question, you hope the answer is yes, but to what degree? most certainly in a career, for me, we most certainly haven't critiqued things that probably needed critiqued. We most certainly haven't taken the information from a critique and actually trained on it. And, the reality of training is, we can accomplish a lot at the kitchen table, but what failures did we have? And then when you say train on it, the short answer is probably no. But then because it's generally more than one, we if we want to refine something, if you were looking at really inundating and integrating a system of operational readiness, certainly in an SOG driven and task level stuff, man, I have a strong belief that we can probably pick about 6 items maybe and get really good at them. And that's going to take a year, 2 years, plus continuous. We would be training on it, but then remember, after that, if we're not learning a new skill set, it's practice. When you go, you should never have to have training. If I give you a skill set that it says somewhere in our general overlay that we're going to do, right? Stretching a hand line. Well, you're the fire department. You got water, you got a pump, you got hose. Unless it's a new technique, then it becomes practice. We practice that, we evaluate that, and if there's a problem, then we go back. And then we have to learn, what is it? Is it a retention problem? Is it I don't give it a crap problem? Is it a truck design, hose design, nozzle design, which are all real problems in the modern fire service? But if you ID it and you just keep doing the same stuff, you're going to get the same result. I don't. It's in my time. I saw the opportunity. Well, it could technically have happened here, obviously, but I'm not referencing this department. Not that I care if that would offend anybody, but they basically bought the same exact fire truck. So they got stuck with the same fire truck for 40 years. First off, it was a good fire truck, but they easily could have just simply made some little tweaks. I mean, in its original design, it was probably one of the best engines I ever worked off of, hands down, a true war wagon. But they could have enhanced it a little bit. They literally bought the same exact truck, just 20 years newer. So, if you're going to evaluate and critique all those types of operations, if we're not doing anything with the information, then how can you expect any different result? Or if you're piecemealing how operationally to do things, it's taken a tool that's kind of capable of doing the job, but it doesn't do it nearly as well as the proper tool. I used that yesterday, cutting metal. You pick a recip saw up. Can you take the demo blade? Yeah, you can, but man, why not take a metal blade? Right? It's those little nuances. They both do the job, but why wouldn't we want the one that does it better or more efficiently?
Amen to that. You'll find no quarrel here. So I guess we're working towards a close. What are some of the quick hitters that you would give to a new person, like regarding instructors or videos? I know you're big on sending out a lot of information for everyone to review and whatnot. Do you have any main sources that you tap from to seek more knowledge?
No, probably what I tell new people most of the time is, now you have all that knowledge, right? I probably steer them towards, I think some of the basic stuff, fire department training network, fire engineering, but I try to, from a historical standpoint, it was all I could do to get 3 different magazines to my house. And that's all I had. I didn't have video training. I mean, to see a fire video was nothing. So like, I give them that perspective of my life, but now we're so saturated in that, and we're so inundated with that knowledge. I try to remind them, is learn as much as you can. And I would say, you know, there's different ones, the kind of like the ones I reference there that I steer them towards. But now we have so many things that you really got to be careful because, you know, and I find myself going through this rabbit hole through the years is the fire service has kind of become like mainstream news where they want to be the first one to get a product out and they're not afraid to say some stuff. And that was really hard for someone like me that came up under different instructions and experiences and really watching it. And I really believe in a lot of that, but you got to be real careful. And I say it a lot of times. I don't think we're too far off fundamentally between ourselves and, you know, as a department and as a fire service. But I think we're kind of we're starting to drift a little bit. We're really starting to get some warring factions up of right and wrong. And until you're battle tested, you know, that's very confusing to a new person. And at least I'm going to guess that because it's still a little confusing to me. You know, I kind of have drawn my line in the sand, and it's not that I don't want to learn or try new things, but I also think that some of that stuff's been over complicated. So why I try to steer people to certain things that I believe in is I also try to remind them that it's most certainly for me, don't take just my opinion, right? You know, if you're just listening to me or just following me around, your scenery never changes. So you got to get out there and learn, you know, get up there, see one, do one, and teach one. You know, I always said, if you weren't up there nose with a senior man or something, well, your scenery never changes. All you're seeing is the name on the back of my coat. So get up there, but you start differentiating that information, start bouncing it off other people, figuring out right and wrong. And when I say it, it sounds a little easy, and I know it's not, but then hopefully somewhere along the line that develops into your own. And that is what I think really starts that model.
I'd also say if you have any other, I guess it's kind of in the same category of seeking information, but for the new person, do you have like a big 5 or a big, you know, here are the main things I want you, Johnny New Boots, to focus on when you first enter the fire service, and this should be your focus for the next X amount of time, you know, like just big.
Well, just hitters. For me, you know, and you know, I obviously trying to buckshot it, man. You know, now the new people are really, you know, they're really, you know, moving in lots of different directions of, you know, being hired, trying to get a book signed off, starting medic school, doing journeyman, you know, making a good first impression. You know, I'm getting to 5 things that don't have hardly any merit other than just completion. But so I'd tell them is, you know, number one, kind of what we started with earlier is, you know, I try to get a feel of where I think they are, you know, are they being assigned to me? Is this their first job? They work other places. Do I know those other places? I try to get that feel, but then it just simply goes back. Hey, this is what we're going to work on. All right. And really it's an evaluation of, well, once you show, you know, let's go back to the beginning, right? Let's take a look at our gear. What are you carrying? Right. You got any of this? No. You ever heard of this? No. All right. Let's see if I got some extra shit laying around. Here's what I carry. You don't have to carry it because I carry it. This is just why I carry it. And then we start building up. How fast can you get that SCBA on today? Right. You know, and then fundamentally, you know, hopefully they're doing those things around the firehouse. You remind them, of a time long ago that you're the new person, so you are expected to do most of this stuff, even though it's still a team effort. This is your time, and you know it is your task. And the better you do these tasks, the quicker that you generally advance into that team dynamic, within the firehouse and then within the crews, and, gear, SCBA, mask up, lines, and how about making coffee? So, I could do a lot of damage with a bunch of dudes that got coffee and know how to get their shit on, pull a line, and put water in the exact location when I need it the most. Everything else is going to fall into play when we start taking glass and getting these areas cleaned out. But if we can really harp on those and instill that learning process with them, I think we can do a lot of damage, and all those other things will start, coming into play, at a later time, sometimes faster, sometimes slower. But, I think that's probably where I'd be at on, I don't know, 5 things, whatever you said.
Oh yeah, that was perfect. Well, I guess we'll open it up to you. Do you have any final thoughts for us? Things that are mulling around and
no, I mean, just for whoever, you know that I enjoy stuff like this, and my final thoughts they're never final, because we're always talking about it. We always find something new, and you all know you can call me, swing in. I'll swing in if you want to talk about something, watch videos, send me an article. Some people send me stuff, and they'll be like, "Thought you'd like this." And my response back is, well, I think the whole fire department like it. Why don't you send it out? I don't have to be the only one sending it out. It's a lifelong learning. I appreciate that people think that I guess have a little something to offer, but I have so many things that I don't know, and that's not just in life. That's just in the fire service, of things that I wish that I knew, things I wish I knew faster. And I can really put a lot of kind of almost time markers. I can think back to about 1995 is when I kind of got serious about, I guess a little more serious, not that I'm super serious, but a little bit more serious about my learning. I've been to a lot of activity prior to 1995. I felt pretty good about my skills and abilities. In 1995, there was a line of duty death in Philadelphia that I read about, and it had a lot of markers that fit of things I didn't know. So in 1995, I'd had 7 years of experience in the fire service, and by probably modern standards, I'd been to a pretty good amount of fire and other types of events. So I had a pretty cocky understanding of what exactly I didn't know. And, that falls into that parameter of super dangerous, that 2 to 7 years. I almost think it gets stretched out now in the modern time to 2 to 10 of that understanding. So when I'm saying that, I'm just giving you a time marker. I didn't know that was a dangerous time for firemen, right? When through our time, but I try to pass that portion on, be serious about the basics and the fundamentals. I've never seen an expert fireman that wasn't good at the basics. Really, mastery of the basics, make sure people understand the basics, and then it's a lifelong learning. Like I said, I will clearly let y'all down on tons of different operations, because I don't have all the answers. That's why we're a team, but I think most of the time we can get to them together.
Beautiful. Well, I think that wraps up all the questions we had and whatnot. So
yeah, well, that's good. I appreciate the opportunity. I appreciate the fact that you think it has some value. I hope it does. People do say that, they're always like, make it better, and pass it on. Well, that's what I hoped that stuff like this accomplishes. I hope our talks in the Bay and stuff, I hope our times at the real runs and training, does that because I've seen a lot of people in a lot of different departments through the years, and I don't think everybody always follows that. So, I guess try to hold true to that. Make it better, pass it on, and learn something new every day. That'll do some pretty good damage.
Amen to that. Well, I do want to thank you for your time. And I can assure you that the honor and privilege is all ours for receiving this information.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. Have a great day.
You too. Thanks.